The Alpha King was dying, until the Omega walked through the door. The silver restraints around Everett Langford's wrist gave a soft metallic pull as he forced himself upright beside the throne. Every breath came slower than the one before it. Dark veins traced the side of his neck, disappearing beneath the open collar of his shirt, while the healers surrounding him stood several feet away, afraid to move closer. Everett barely noticed them. He was listening to his own heartbeat. One beat, a pause, another. Too slow. Across the great hall, Royal Healer Mara Ellison pressed 2 fingers to his pulse and looked toward High Regent Cyrus Vane. She did not need to say anything. Cyrus understood. Everyone did. Their king was running out of time. "The full moon may be too late," Mara finally said. Her voice was quiet, but in the silent hall it carried. Everett lifted his head. He hated the fear on their faces more than he hated the pain. For months, Blackridge had watched its strongest alpha disappear behind locked doors and silver restraints. The stories outside the keep had grown worse with every passing week. Some said the king had become a monster. Some said he had already lost his mind. Everett knew the truth was simpler. He was still himself. He just did not know how much longer that would remain true. Cyrus stepped forward, his black onyx signet catching the firelight as he folded his hands behind his back. "There is one remaining option, Your Majesty." Everett's expression hardened. "You said that yesterday. Yesterday we had not found her." The great doors opened. Everett turned toward the sound. 2 royal guards entered first. Between them walked a young woman in a plain gray-blue dress, her chestnut hair loose from the long carriage ride. She looked small beneath the high stone arches of Blackridge, but she did not lower her eyes. Willa Prescott had spent most of her life being told when to speak, where to stand, and how little space an Omega like her deserved to take. Yet when she saw the man chained beside the throne, none of the frightening stories mattered. She did not see a savage king. She saw someone struggling to stay conscious. Her steps slowed. Everett's wolf stirred. Not with rage. With recognition so sudden that his breath caught. Willa stopped about 20 feet away. A strange pressure touched the center of her chest. Pain. Exhaustion. Loneliness. It did not belong to her. She had felt other people's distress before. Children with fevers, injured animals hiding beneath porches, elderly wolves who pretended they were not afraid. But this was different. Everett's suffering filled the room like a storm no one else could hear. Then something changed. Mara looked sharply at him. "Wait." Everett felt it too. His heartbeat strengthened. One clean beat, then another. The dark veins along his throat stopped spreading. A healer stepped closer in disbelief. "His pulse is stabilizing." Cyrus slowly turned toward Willa. For the first time, real interest broke through his calm expression. Willa did not understand why everyone was staring at her. She took one uncertain step backward. Everett's heartbeat weakened. Mara froze. "Bring her closer." Willa hesitated. Everett's wolf surged toward the strange calm surrounding her, and fear shot through him. Not fear of her, fear for her. He knew what happened when the shadow blight took control. He knew how little strength remained between his mind and the creature pressing against it. "No." His voice came out rough. Cyrus glanced at him. "Your Majesty, I said no." Everett pulled against the restraints just enough to remind everyone why they were there. Willa went still. For one brief moment, their eyes met. His were silver gray, exhausted but painfully aware. Hers were green touched with gray, frightened but searching. Everett saw no ambition in them, no hunger for the throne, only concern. That made it worse. "Take her away from me," he ordered. Willa flinched. She thought she understood. Even dying, the Alpha King did not want an Omega like her near him. The guards turned her toward the doors. She took 3 steps. Behind her, Mara inhaled sharply. Everett's heartbeat was slowing again. Willa stopped. No one told her to. She simply felt it, the sudden fading pressure inside her chest, like a distant light being smothered. She looked back. Everett was watching her now, not with disgust, with something far more unsettling. fear. Cyrus noticed it too. His fingers tightened around the onyx ring. "Bring her back," he said. Everett's gaze snapped toward him. "Do not touch her." The words were quiet. They carried more authority than a shout. Every wolf in the hall became still. Everett could feel darkness climbing through him again, but one thought cut through it with perfect clarity. He did not know who Willa Prescott was. He did not know why his dying heart had begun beating when she entered the room. But he knew one thing already. Whatever Blackridge believed it needed from this Omega, no one would take it from her by force. Hours earlier, Willa Prescott had been kneeling beside a frightened wolf pup at the edge of Pine Hollow when the royal carriage arrived. The little animal had twisted one paw badly after slipping between two roots, and every attempt to move it had made it panic. 3 grown wolves had already given up. Willa had not. She sat in the dirt, kept her hands where the pup could see them, and spoke softly until its trembling eased. "That is it," she whispered. "You do not have to be brave all at once." The pup finally leaned into her palm. Willa smiled, unaware that several yards behind her, Alpha Dean Hart had stepped out of the pack house with 2 royal guards at his side. "Prescott." His voice carried across the yard. Willa looked up. The smile left her face. Everyone in Pine Hollow had heard the rumors about Blackridge. The Alpha King was sick. Some said cursed. Others said he could no longer control his wolf. Willa had ignored most of it. Rumors grew teeth when people were afraid. But the royal crest on the carriage door was real. She stood slowly. Dean did not ask how the pup was doing. He did not ask whether she was ready to travel. He only said, "The Crown is searching every nearby pack for a moon-pure Omega." Willa glanced at the guards. "Why?" One of them shifted uncomfortably, but Dean answered first. "The king needs one." That was all. Willa waited. Dean looked almost annoyed that she expected more. "You have never completed a mate bond. You have never carried an alpha mark. You meet the requirement." Something cold settled beneath her ribs. Around them, pack members had begun watching from porches and doorways. No one stepped closer. Willa wiped the dirt from her hands. "And if I refuse?" Dean's jaw tightened. "Blackridge asked for cooperation. I intend to give it." It was not an answer, which told her everything. She looked toward the infirmary, where she spent most mornings. Mrs. Bell had a fever. 2 children needed their medicine before sunset. Old Thomas would forget to eat unless someone reminded him. None of that mattered to Dean. Strength mattered. Rank mattered. Willa had neither. A younger wolf near the doorway whispered, "Why her?" Dean did not lower his voice. "Send Prescott. No one will miss her." The words landed quietly. That made them worse. Willa had been called weak before. Useless. Soft. Too gentle for a world that respected claws and dominance. But she had never heard her place in Pine Hollow stated so clearly. No one will miss her. She looked down at the pup. It had crawled close enough to rest against her boot. Willa bent and gave it one last stroke behind the ears. Then she stood. "Will taking me help the king?" Dean hesitated, only for a second. "That is what Blackridge believes." Willa studied his face. She knew better than to mistake uncertainty for honesty. But she also knew what the king represented. Blackridge kept peace between packs that had fought for generations. If Everett Langford died, the consequences would reach far beyond one castle. "Then I will go." Dean seemed relieved. That hurt more than she expected. Willa packed one small bag, a second dress, a comb, her mother's worn handkerchief. Nothing else belonged entirely to her. By late morning, Pine Hollow disappeared behind the carriage. For the first few miles, neither guard spoke. Willa watched trees slide past the window and told herself she had made a choice. Maybe not a free one, but still a choice. She could help someone. That had always mattered to her, even when nobody thought it counted as strength. Near midday, the road climbed into darker hills. The guards finally began talking in low voices, forgetting how clearly sound carried inside the carriage. Do you think she knows? One asked. Keep your voice down. I am asking because the last 3 did not. Willa stopped breathing. A pause followed. Then the second guard said, They were told enough. Enough for what? Enough to enter the keep. Willa turned her face toward the window, but every part of her attention sharpened. The first guard lowered his voice further, and none came back. The carriage wheels continued over the stone road as if nothing had changed. Willa stared at her reflection in the glass. Suddenly, Dean's relief made sense. The hurried departure made sense. The silence made sense. Blackridge had not asked Pine Hollow for a healer. They had asked for someone they could afford to lose. And as the dark towers of the royal keep rose in the distance, Willa understood the truth before anyone had the courage to tell her. She had not been sent to save the king. She had been sent because everyone believed saving him might cost her life. By evening, Willa knew why the last 3 Omegas had never returned. After Everett ordered everyone to keep their hands off her, the guards did not take her back to the carriage. They escorted her downstairs instead, through a quiet corridor beneath Blackridge Keep and into the royal infirmary. The room smelled of dried herbs, warm wax, and something bitter simmering over a small flame. Mara Ellison stood beside a long wooden table, sorting glass bottles into neat rows. She looked up when Willa entered. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Mara said, Sit down. Willa remained standing. Am I a prisoner? Mara paused. Not by my order. It was not comforting, but at least it was honest. Willa glanced at the bottles. One held a dark green liquid with a handwritten label, Shadowbane Tincture. Mara noticed her looking. It eases shifting spasms, in small amounts. She moved the bottle farther back on the shelf. Too much can slow the heart dangerously. Willa stored the detail away without knowing why. The infirmary door opened. Cyrus Vane entered alone. His black onyx signet ring caught the candlelight when he adjusted one cuff. Willa had seen the same ring in the great hall. Up close, she noticed a strange symbol carved into it, a crescent crossed by 3 narrow lines. Miss Prescott, Cyrus said, I imagine today has been confusing. That depends on how much everyone has decided not to tell me. Mara looked down. Cyrus did not. Fair enough. He crossed the room and stopped several feet away. The king suffers from something called the shadow blight. It is not an ordinary illness. It attacks the bond between a wolf and the human mind. Willa thought of Everett fighting against his own restraints. And you believe I can stop it. We believe a moon-pure Omega can. How? Cyrus studied her before answering. There is an old royal text. It says, The moon-pure shall bear what the king can no longer carry. The words settled coldly inside her. Bear what? The corruption. Willa stared at him. You want to move it from him into me? Cyrus did not deny it. The ritual may separate the shadow blight from the king. And what happens to me? Silence. Willa felt her heartbeat become louder. What happened to the other Omegas? Mara turned sharply toward Cyrus. He answered with the calm tone of a man discussing weather. They did not survive the process. And there it was, no softer language, no comforting lie. Willa looked toward Mara. The healer seemed ashamed, which told Willa she had not been the one choosing who came here. Does Everett know? Willa asked. Cyrus gave the smallest pause. His Majesty knows the ritual is dangerous. That was not what she had asked. Does he know it could kill me? Cyrus glanced toward the door. The king is not always capable of discussing difficult matters clearly. Willa remembered Everett looking directly at her. Exhausted, yes. Frightened, perhaps, but not confused. That still was not an answer. For the first time, Cyrus looked irritated. Your role could save the ruler who keeps dozens of packs from turning on one another. There are moments when one life must serve something greater. Willa felt Pine Hollow again. No one will miss her. Different room, different man, same idea. Her life was important only when someone else could spend it. Cyrus left soon after, telling Mara to prepare Willa for the ritual the following night. Willa waited until his footsteps disappeared. "Did he tell me the truth?" she asked. Mara slowly removed her gloves. "He told you what the council has been taught." "That is not the same thing." "No." Mara looked toward the old corridor beyond the infirmary. "It is not." Later, while Mara was called upstairs to check Everett, Willa stepped into that corridor. She was not trying to escape, she only needed air that did not smell like medicine and secrets. A faded tapestry hung crooked along one wall. Behind its edge, something had been carved into the stone. Willa pulled the fabric aside. Most of the inscription had been worn away, but several words remained. "Not carried, freely given, anchor." Beneath them was the same crescent symbol carved into Cyrus Vane's onyx ring. Willa touched the cold stone. Why would an old prophecy say the darkness was not carried, if Cyrus claimed that was exactly what she was supposed to do? A sound drifted down from somewhere above, low, broken, not anger, pain. Willa closed her eyes, and the strange pressure in her chest returned at once. Everett. Even through stone and distance, she could feel the storm inside him. Mara had warned her that the East Tower was forbidden. Cyrus had made it clear she was not to approach the king alone. Willa looked once more at the hidden words. Not carried, freely given, anchor. Then she turned toward the narrow staircase leading upward. If everyone in Blackridge was lying about what Everett needed, there was only one person left she could ask. The East Tower was colder than the rest of Blackridge, and the higher Willa climbed, the quieter the keep became. By the time she reached the final landing, she could hear only two things: the wind against the narrow windows, and Everett breathing behind the iron door. She stopped with her hand inches from the latch. Mara had warned her not to come here alone. Cyrus had forbidden it. Every sensible thought told her to turn back. Then another strained breath came from inside. Willa opened the door. Everett was on one knee near the center of the chamber, silver restraints fastened around his wrists and anchored to the stone floor. The dark lines beneath his skin had spread farther since the great hall. His shoulders trembled with the effort of staying still. When he heard the door, his head lifted. His eyes were too bright. "Leave." Willa stayed beside the doorway. "I need to ask you something." Everett's hands tightened. "You need to leave." His voice was deeper now, roughened by whatever fought inside him. Willa could feel it from across the room. Pain, confusion, a terrible pressure pushing against the man he was. But beneath all of it, one emotion stood out clearly. Fear. Not fear for himself. Fear of what he might do if she came closer. "You are afraid of hurting me," she said. Everett went still. "Do not mistake restraint for safety." "I am not." Willa took one careful step forward. The silver restraints pulled tight as Everett shifted backward instead of toward her. That small movement told her more than any warning could. The creature inside him might be reaching for her, but Everett was fighting it. "Stay there," he said. Willa did. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then she tried the simplest thing she could think of. "Everett." His head lifted sharply. No one in Blackridge had called him that in her presence. Everyone said, "Your Majesty, the King, the Alpha." But the man in front of her looked as though he had spent months being treated as a title, a problem, or a threat. "Everett," she said again, softer. His breathing changed, not much, but enough. The pressure in Willa's chest eased. She took another step. The dark lines at his throat stopped moving. Everett noticed, so did she. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I do not know." That answer seemed to matter. There was no performance in it, no claim that she understood something she did not. Willa lowered herself into a chair several feet away. "Cyrus told me why I was brought here." Everett's expression hardened. "To help stabilize the curse." "That is not all he told me." Silence stretched between them. Willa watched his face carefully. He said the ritual moves the shadow blight out of you and into me. Everett stared at her. The room seemed to change around that silence. No. Willa felt her stomach tighten. He said the last 3 Omegas did not survive. Everett's face lost what little color remained. No. This time the word was quieter, more dangerous because of how controlled it was. Willa understood immediately. He had not known. What did they tell you? She asked. Everett looked toward the floor. That the ritual would strengthen the healing connection, that it would exhaust you, nothing more. Willa thought of Cyrus in the infirmary, speaking about sacrifice as though a life could be entered into a ledger. Everett looked back at her. Did you agree to this? I agreed to come because I was told I might save you. I did not agree to die. Something in Everett's expression settled. The fear remained, but now it had direction. Then you will not. Footsteps sounded outside. The door opened before Willa could answer. Cyrus entered with 2 guards behind him. His gaze moved from Willa to Everett, then to the loosened darkness along Everett's neck. For one instant, surprise crossed his face. Miss Prescott was instructed to remain downstairs. Everett slowly stood. The effort clearly cost him, but his voice was steady. She stays where she chooses. Cyrus folded his hands behind his back. The onyx ring caught the candlelight. Your Majesty, the ritual must proceed. Your condition is worsening. You told me she would survive! Cyrus said nothing. Everett took one slow breath. You told me the danger was temporary weakness. The situation is more complicated than that. Will the ritual kill her? Cyrus looked toward Willa, then back at the king. It may be the only way to save you. Everett stepped between Cyrus and Willa. That was not my question. The room went silent. Cyrus finally said, Without the transfer, you may not live to see another full moon. Everett did not look away from him. Then find another way. There may not be one. Everett turned his head just enough to make sure Willa was still behind him. Then he faced Cyrus again. Then I die. Cyrus's composure slipped for the first time. Everett's voice stayed low. No ritual, no transfer, no one touches her. Willa stared at the man who could barely remain standing, yet had placed himself between her and the most powerful official in the realm. Everett had needed her presence just to steady his heart, and still, the moment he learned what saving him might cost, he chose her life over his own. Cyrus looked at Willa once more before leaving. This time, there was no indifference in his eyes. There was fear. By morning, Everett looked worse. Willa noticed it before Mara said a word. The dark lines beneath his skin had faded while she sat near him during the night, but the moment she left the east tower to eat and wash, his pulse began to slip again. Mara confirmed it twice. Willa stayed in the doorway of the royal infirmary while the healer checked her notes. When you are near him, his heart steadies, Mara said. When you leave, it does not. Willa looked toward the narrow window. That does not mean I should be locked beside him. No, Mara closed the ledger. It does not. Everett made sure of that himself. Later that morning, Willa returned to the tower and found him standing near the window, one hand resting against the stone wall. He was pale, exhausted, but fully aware. A small iron key lay on the table between them. What is that? She asked. The tower key. Willa stared at him. Everett nodded toward the door. The guards have been ordered to let you leave whenever you choose. Cyrus agreed to that? Cyrus was not asked. For the first time since arriving at Blackridge, Willa almost smiled. Everett noticed, but did not comment. You came here without a real choice, he said. I will not be another man who takes one from you. Willa looked at the key again. Freedom had never seemed so small before. She picked it up. It felt cool in her palm. And if I leave? Everett's expression did not change. Then you leave. Even if it makes you worse? A pause. Yes. That answer stayed with her. All morning, Willa carried the key in the pocket of her dress. She could have walked through the gates. No one would have stopped her. She thought about Pine Hollow, about Dean Hart, about the way he had said no one would miss her. She thought about Everett, who had known her less than a day and had already refused to save himself at her expense. By noon, she made her choice. She stayed. Not because Blackridge demanded it, not because Cyrus had ordered it, because she wanted to understand what was happening. The hours that followed became strangely quiet. Everett remained in the tower, but the silver restraints were loosened while he was calm. Willa sat several feet away and talked when the silence became too heavy. At first, Everett answered only when necessary. Then, slowly, he began to ask questions. What did you do in Pine Hollow? Mostly the things everyone else thought were too small to matter. Such as? Children, injured animals, elderly wolves who pretended they did not need help. Everett looked at her. Those do not sound small. Willa gave a soft laugh. You have not met Dean Hart. I know the type. She studied him. And what did you do before all this? Everett glanced at the dark veins near his wrist. I ruled. That is not what I asked. Something almost warm passed through his expression. I rode the northern borders, settled disputes, visited packs that thought the crown had forgotten them. Willa leaned back in her chair. So you spent your time helping people who thought they did not matter. Everett looked at her for a long moment. Perhaps. Later, while he slept, Willa returned to the old archive corridor. The hidden carving was still behind the tapestry. Not carried, freely given. Anchor. This time she noticed the symbol beneath the words. The same crescent crossed by 3 lines. The same mark on Cyrus Vane's onyx ring. Her pulse quickened. She traced the edge of the carving but found nothing else she could read. When she returned to the tower, Everett was awake and struggling for breath. The darkness had begun creeping up his throat again. Stay back, he warned. Willa ignored the fear in his voice and moved closer, but not close enough to touch him. Look at me. Everett shut his eyes. Willa. Look at me. He did. The pressure inside her chest sharpened. She could feel him slipping, not physically, but inward, as if something were pulling him away from his own name. She reached out. May I? Everett looked at her hand. Even then, even desperate, he waited. Then he nodded. Willa took his hand. The effect was immediate. His breathing slowed. The dark lines beneath his skin stopped moving. Then, for several seconds, they faded almost completely. Willa felt a wave of dizziness and tightened her grip on the chair with her other hand, but she did not let go. Everett stared at their joined hands. What did you do? I do not know. Willa remembered the carved words. Not carried, freely given. Anchor. She looked up at him, her fear changing into something sharper, understanding. I do not think I am supposed to die for you, she said quietly. Everett's eyes held hers. Willa tightened her hand around his. I think I am supposed to bring you back. By the afternoon of the 3rd day, Willa knew 2 things for certain. Her presence helped Everett, and someone in Blackridge did not want that to continue. The change began quietly. Everett had been resting when his breathing suddenly turned uneven. Willa was only a few feet away, reading the faded inscription she had copied from memory onto a scrap of paper. Not carried, freely given. Anchor. She looked up at once. The dark lines beneath Everett's skin had returned, darker than before. He pressed one hand against his chest and forced himself to stay upright. Willa crossed the room. Everett. His eyes found hers, but the calm did not come as quickly this time. She reached for his hand. The moment their skin touched, the pressure inside her chest surged so sharply that she nearly lost her balance. Everett noticed. Let go. No. Willa. I am fine. She was not. Her hands were trembling. Still, she held on until his breathing steadied. When Mara arrived, one look at Everett made her face tighten. "This is worse than this morning." Willa released his hand slowly. "Why?" Mara had no answer. Everett looked toward the door. "Where is Cyrus?" No one had seen the regent for nearly an hour. Far below the east tower, Cyrus stood alone in the great hall. The room was empty except for the cold throne and the pale light falling across the stone floor. He turned the black onyx ring on his finger until the crescent symbol faced inward. Then he pressed his hand against a matching mark hidden beneath the edge of the royal dais. A faint shadow moved through the carved lines under the floor. It lasted only seconds. That was enough. Back in the tower, Everett suddenly doubled over, not from injury, but from a wave of weakness so intense that even Willa could feel it. Mara rushed to check his pulse. "Too slow." Willa looked toward the door. Something about the timing felt wrong. "This is not happening by itself." Everett heard her. His expression sharpened. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, royal guards entered. Cyrus followed them, calm, controlled, almost regretful. "Miss Prescott," he said, "there has been a serious development." Willa stood. "What happened?" Cyrus held up a small glass vial, Shadowbane tincture, the same dark green medicine Mara had shown her in the infirmary. "This was found among your belongings." Willa stared at it. "That is not mine." Mara stepped forward. "She has no reason to carry that." Cyrus looked at the healer. "In a concentrated amount, it can slow the heart. You explained that yourself." Willa felt the room turn cold. "You put it there." Cyrus did not react. "The council will decide that." Everett pushed himself upright. "There will be no council hearing until I can attend." Cyrus finally looked at him. "Your Majesty, you can barely stand." "And yet I am still king." For the first time, tension entered Cyrus's voice. "You are also the patient she has been alone with for hours." Willa saw what he was doing. He was not trying to prove she was guilty. He only needed to make everyone afraid long enough to separate them. A guard stepped toward her. Willa reached into her pocket by instinct and felt the tower key Everett had given her. Cyrus noticed. "Take the key." Willa's fingers closed around it. Everett's voice cut through the room. "Do not." The guard stopped. Cyrus turned to him. "If she is innocent, the inquiry will clear her." "Then question her here." "That is not how emergency law works when the king's life is at risk." Everett tried to move toward Willa, but his strength failed. Mara caught his arm before he fell. Willa's heart tightened. She could stay and force the moment into something worse, or she could let the guards take her and trust Everett to survive long enough to fight back. She pulled the key from her pocket and placed it in the guard's open hand. "I did not poison him." Everett looked at her. "I know." Cyrus's expression changed almost imperceptibly. He had wanted doubt. Everett gave him none. Willa was taken to the great hall as evening settled over Blackridge. The council gathered. The vial was placed on a table as evidence. Cyrus spoke of duty, risk, the need to protect the crown. Willa listened without lowering her head. Then he announced that the original ritual would proceed at midnight. Her blood ran cold. "You said the council would decide whether I was guilty." "This is not punishment," Cyrus replied. "It is necessity." Willa understood then. The accusation had never been the goal. The ritual was. Far above them, Everett woke to an empty room and the sound of his own failing heartbeat. "Where is she?" Mara hesitated. That was enough. Everett looked toward the restraint still fixed to the stone. Down in the great hall, a priest reached for Willa's wrist. Then, from somewhere high inside the keep, a sharp metallic crack echoed through the halls. Everyone stopped. A second crack followed. Cyrus turned toward the doors. Willa did too. And for the first time that night, she smiled. The doors of the great hall opened before anyone could speak. Everett stood in the entrance, pale, unsteady, and breathing hard, but standing on his own. The silver restraints that had held him in the East Tower were gone. One broken clasp still hung from his wrist. The council rose at once. Cyrus did not. His face remained calm, but his eyes sharpened. Willa felt the room change the moment Everett entered. Not because he looked powerful, he did not. He looked like a man who had crossed the entire keep on strength he did not have. That made his presence more frightening. "Release her," Everett said. No one moved. Cyrus stepped forward. "Your Majesty, you should not be here." "Release her." The guard beside Willa looked toward Cyrus, then toward the king. That hesitation was enough. Everett saw it. "Did you forget who gives orders in this room?" The guard immediately stepped back. Willa's hands were free, but she did not move. Her attention stayed on Everett. The dark lines beneath his skin had spread again. He was worse than when she last saw him. Much worse. Cyrus noticed her looking. "This is exactly why the ritual cannot wait," he said. "The king is failing." Everett took another step into the hall. "Then treat me." "We have tried." "Then keep trying." Cyrus lifted the vial of Shadowbane from the evidence table. "And while we do that, should we ignore the fact that this was found among her belongings?" Everett did not even look at it. "Willa did not poison me." "You cannot know that." "I know enough." Cyrus's voice hardened. "Your judgment is compromised." A murmur moved through the council. Everett stopped. For a moment, Willa thought he might answer with anger. He did not. He looked around the room instead. "My judgment was clear enough when I ordered that no one touch her." Silence. "It was clear enough when I refused the transfer ritual." Cyrus's expression shifted, only slightly. Everett continued. "And it is clear enough now." He reached Willa at last and placed himself between her and the ritual table. Not close enough to touch her, just close enough to make his choice visible to everyone. Cyrus lowered his voice. "If the ritual does not happen tonight, you may not survive until morning." Willa looked at Everett. He did not look afraid. He looked tired. More tired than any king should ever look. "Then I die," he said. The words landed softly. No speech, no performance, just a decision. Cyrus stared at him. Everett turned his head toward Willa for one brief second, then faced the council again. "But she lives." No one moved. Willa felt something tighten behind her ribs. She had spent years being useful only when someone else benefited. Now a dying man was refusing to purchase his life with hers. Cyrus stepped closer. "You would risk the stability of every pack for one Omega?" Everett's gaze became cold. A kingdom that survives by sacrificing the innocent has already lost what it claims to protect. Several council members lowered their eyes. Cyrus saw it. Willa saw it too. He was losing them. "You are weak," Cyrus said quietly, "and she has made you weaker." Everett answered without hesitation. "No. She reminded me what strength is for." That was the moment Cyrus changed. Not dramatically. Not enough for anyone who did not know to watch him. His right hand closed around the black onyx ring. Willa noticed the crescent symbol turn inward against his palm. The same symbol from the hidden carving. Her heartbeat quickened. "Everett," she said. He looked back at her. "The ring." Cyrus pressed his hand against the edge of the royal dais. A low hum moved beneath the floor. Willa felt it before anyone else did. The pressure inside her chest became unbearable. Everett staggered. Mara, standing near the council table, rushed toward him. "His pulse is dropping." Dark lines spread rapidly along Everett's throat. He gripped the side of the throne but could not steady himself. Willa moved toward him. Cyrus stepped in her path. "Stay back." She looked at his hand. The ring was glowing faintly against the stone. "You are doing this." Cyrus did not answer. He did not need to. Everett lifted his head, but his eyes were changing. Silver. Too bright. His breathing deepened. The room seemed to shrink around him. Council members backed away. Guards reached for their weapons, but Everett was no longer looking at them. He was fighting something no one else could see. "Everett." Willa's voice shook. His gaze found her for half a second. Recognition. Then it vanished. His body shifted, shadows spilling across his wolf form until the enormous black shape stood where the king had been. The great hall fell silent. Cyrus stepped back and said, "You see, there is no king left to save." Willa looked at the shadow wolf. Everyone else saw a monster. She saw the same thing she had seen in the tower, a man trapped behind fear, pain, and darkness. The guards formed a line. Willa stepped past them. "Miss Prescott," Mara whispered. Willa kept walking. The shadow wolf turned toward her, and instead of running, Willa raised her hand and said the one name she still believed he could hear. "Everett." The shadow wolf stopped when Willa said his name. Not completely, not safely, but enough for her to see that Everett was still there. Somewhere behind the silver eyes and the darkness twisting around him, he had heard her. The guards tightened their formation. Mara raised one hand. "Do not move unless she tells you to." Willa kept walking, one step, then another. The pressure inside her chest was almost unbearable now, but she understood it differently. This was not the curse pouring into her. It was Everett slipping away from himself. She remembered the hidden words beneath the tapestry. Not carried, freely given. Anchor. Cyrus had told them the moon pure must take the darkness. The old carving said the opposite. "You were wrong," Willa said without looking at him. Cyrus stood beside the dais, his onyx ring still pressed against the carved symbol. "You have no idea what you are doing." "Neither did you." The shadow wolf lowered its head. Willa stopped just beyond its reach. Every instinct told her to run. She stayed. "Everett, listen to me." The wolf gave a low, warning sound. Willa did not move closer. "I am not here to fight you." The pressure shifted. For one heartbeat, she felt something familiar beneath the storm. Fear. His fear. Not of her. For her. Just like the first night in the tower. "You are still trying to protect me," she whispered. The wolf's ears moved. Willa lifted her hands slowly. "You told me I could choose." Her voice shook, but she kept going. "So I am choosing now." Cyrus turned the ring harder against the seal. The faint glow beneath the floor brightened. Everett reacted instantly, his body tensing as the darkness surged around him. Willa finally understood the connection. The same symbol on the ring, the same symbol in the archive, the same force pulling Everett away every time he grew worse without explanation. "Mara," Willa said, still watching Everett. "The ring is controlling something under the floor." Cyrus stepped back. "Enough." Mara looked from the ring to the pale lines spreading across the stone. Her face changed. "The shadow seal." Several council members stared at Cyrus. He had no explanation ready this time. Willa did not need one. She turned back to Everett. "The darkness is not yours." The wolf's breathing changed. "And it is not mine to carry." She took one final step and held her hand beside his face. "But if you want to come back, I will stay." The shadow wolf trembled. Then, slowly, Everett leaned into her palm. Willa closed her eyes. The impact nearly took her knees out from under her. Pain rushed through the connection, but it did not enter her body as a curse. It moved around her like a storm searching for somewhere to go. Willa held on to one thing, his name. Everett. Somewhere inside the darkness, he heard her again. He remembered the tower key in her hand, her voice in the quiet chamber, the way she had stayed after he gave her permission to leave. He remembered the words he had spoken in front of the council. "Then I die, but she lives." Willa felt him answer, not with words, but with resistance. The shadow wolf recoiled from the force beneath the floor. The light in Cyrus's ring flickered. "No," Cyrus said. For the first time, he sounded afraid. The carved lines beneath the dais began to fade. Everett was no longer feeding the seal with fear. He was fighting his way back. Willa's hand trembled. Her strength was fading, but she stayed with him. "Come back to me." The darkness around the wolf broke apart like smoke in wind. Cyrus pulled his hand away from the dais, but the ring flashed once, revealing thin lines of light connecting it to the seal beneath the floor. Every member of the council saw it. Mara saw it. Everett saw it. The shadow wolf changed, not violently but gradually, the darkness lifting until Everett was on his knees where the wolf had stood. He looked exhausted, human, alive. Cyrus tried to step away. Royal guards blocked him. The onyx ring was removed from his hand. The seal went dark. Willa swayed and Everett reached for her before she could fall. His hands were weak but steady enough. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Willa looked at him in disbelief. After everything, that was his first question. She shook her head. Everett let out a breath that sounded almost like relief. Behind them, Cyrus was taken into custody while Mara ordered the great hall cleared. Willa looked down at Everett's hand wrapped around hers. His pulse was still weak, but it was no longer fading. For the first time since she entered Blackridge, the darkness beneath his skin was gone. Everett looked toward Cyrus, then back at Willa. "He is not touching you again." His voice was quiet, certain. Willa believed him. But as dawn began to lighten the high windows, one question remained between them. Everett no longer needed her to keep breathing. What would happen when staying beside him became a choice for both of them? 3 weeks later, Blackridge no longer felt like a place waiting for someone to die. Morning light filled the great hall as representatives from every pack gathered beneath the high stone arches. Everett stood before them without silver restraints, without darkness beneath his skin, and without Cyrus Vane beside the throne. The onyx signet ring rested under guard as evidence. Mara had spent days comparing medical records, old archive notes, and the hidden inscription Willa had found. The truth was no longer rumor. Cyrus had used the shadow seal to keep Everett weak. He had altered the prophecy. He had also helped create a system that treated the previous moon-pure Omegas as expendable. Their names were read aloud before the council. Not as failed treatments, as victims. Willa stood near the front of the hall when Cyrus was formally stripped of his authority and taken away to face judgment under royal law. She felt no triumph, only relief. Some wounds did not need revenge, they needed truth. Then Everett stepped forward with a second decree. From this day forward, no Omega may be surrendered as tribute, sacrifice, payment, or medical offering without full and willing consent. The hall went still. Everett continued. Rank does not erase choice. One by one, the council members agreed. That was when Willa saw Dean Hart standing among the Pine Hollow delegation. His face had gone pale. Months ago, he had looked at her and decided she was the easiest life to lose. Now every person in the great hall stood when Willa walked past him. Dean lowered his eyes. Willa did not stop. She did not need an apology to know her worth. Later, Everett found her on the west terrace above the gardens. Winter clouds were gathering beyond the mountains, and the air carried the clean scent of pine. He held something in his palm. The tower key. "I believe this belongs to you." Willa looked at it. "That door is not locked anymore." "I know." He placed the key in her hand. "That is why I wanted you to have it." She understood. The first time he gave her that key, it meant she was free to leave. Now it meant the same thing. Everett had survived. He no longer needed her presence to steady his heart. No curse forced them together. No prophecy demanded anything more. He could finally ask without necessity hiding inside the question. Everett lowered himself to one knee. Willa blinked in surprise. "You are a king," she said softly. "At the moment, I am just Everett." A smile touched her face. He looked up at her. "When I needed your life, you gave me compassion. When everyone around you tried to decide your future, you still chose kindness. I do not need you to keep me alive anymore." He paused. "I want a life with you." Willa felt the old instinct to make herself smaller. Then she remembered Pine Hollow, the carriage, the tower, the night she had walked toward a frightened wolf when everyone else stepped away. She had spent years believing being gentle meant being powerless. Everett had never asked her to become harder. He had only asked her to choose. "Then ask me," she said. His expression softened. "Will you stay?" Willa placed her hand in his. yes. Their bond formed quietly, without command or obligation, a warmth settling between them because both had chosen it freely. One winter later, the old ritual rooms beneath Blackridge had been transformed into Moonhaven, a refuge for Omegas who had nowhere safe to go. Willa visited often, even after becoming Luna Queen. One afternoon, a young Omega asked her, "What happens if nobody chooses me?" Willa smiled. "Choose yourself first." Outside, Everett waited with her cloak. He placed it around her shoulders, and together they walked toward the terrace where the lights of Blackridge glowed below. There were no cries from the East Tower anymore, only voices, music, and children laughing in the courtyard. Everett took Willa's hand. "No one will ever hurt you again," he said. Willa looked at him and smiled, because she finally understood the promise. He was not offering to stand in front of her forever. He was promising to stand beside her. Maybe that is the lesson worth carrying with us. Real strength does not control, demand, or decide for someone else. It protects choice. Real love does not make a person smaller. It helps them stand taller. If you agree, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories about courage, dignity, and love that chooses gently.